is still preparing them. There we go. Now we're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Freedom Warrior Conversations, 43rd session. I am Julian Katari. I'm with Ingrid Huffman. And for those of you who are new to these podcasts, to these recordings, well, I want to say that we are coming from something that you've probably never heard before, which is complete total freedom, which requires a high degree of mysticism, because the mystic is the person that discovers the truth, that there's a whole bunch of lies out there, and the depth of those lies are astonishing. And to become part of the truth, you have to really defy what you've understood as true, as part of reality. Much of what we think is a reality really isn't. So it really requires going out there. But then we must at some point get there. We must at some point evolve and get to the truth and be able to take humanity into another stage that is not domination, that is not bondage, that is not everything we are seeing today, all the crisis, all the problems in the world. So we believe, me and Ingrid, that it's possible to get there, and we are doing this, trying to jumpstart this movement, this group of people that will create a freedom movement, a freedom nation. So that's our Freedom Nation, and this is the 43rd conversation we've had around this subject and many subjects from this perspective. So get ready to listen to something that is really far out there, and get ready to also, I want to point this out. This might look cheap to you, right? This might look, oh, this is not a, there's 3 viewers, there's 2 viewers, there's no scenery, there's no production, there's no investment in this video. But that is the sign that that we are coming from a grassroots, that we are coming from a place that is not the system. So I know it's more entertaining to watch stuff that is well edited and well prepared, and this is not the case. But this is not entertainment. So if you want to really learn something, then I think this is the place. So we today have the 2nd session of the fire initiations, which began last week. And Ingrid is going to tell us what that involves. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi. That was quite the introduction.
Yeah, gotta put some context in case somebody is totally new to this.
Well, so actually that fits right with what you said, fits right with the new words I put on Trello for the 13th hexagram, 13th law of the Book of Changes. It's called the kindred. And it says the 12th hexagram was stagnation or clogging, and so it says decline must end, that the clogging and stagnation must end, and when it does, we will find people of like mind and heart. Community that arises out of friendship, mutual association, and inherent enthusiasm is the best community of all. There's no need to force unity. Everyone is there voluntarily and enjoys the benefits of being together. Kindred shows a single open-minded leader. Kindred speaks to long-lasting groups such as clans, family clans, right? In the image of wilderness, there's a sense of people migrating to a new settlement. And this happened when King Wen was deposed from his kingship. He had set up self-governed communities, I guess. And he convinced his people to leave their hunter-gatherer lifestyle and settled down in villages of farming.
Okay. That was where?
That was in China.
Okay.
So, and they did so prolific with their farming villages that they were invaded by barbarians from the north, as usual, the colonizers from the north. And
the Mongols.
so he gave up and fled to another part of China, and all his people followed him.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where this kindred comes from. It's this kind of spontaneous, natural gathering that the power, and that's where the power of kindred is the greatest. So yeah, this Owl Freedom Nations is going to be inspired by kindred. People coming together, people migrating out of the cities and wanting to really be something else. So tonight we're going to step into an initiation journey. As I was researching it and writing it, I realized it's not so much by fire. It can exhibit during, and so it can blossom into fullness by fire, but it's kind of really a wood initiation. Mm-hmm. Because it's, and we'll get into it, but let's start with this prayer, so to speak.
Okay.
Creator, we are gathered, connected by intention and by the threads of our souls. We share this journey of life, of being alive through a profound time of revolutionary transformation of what it means to be a soul experiencing human life. How ought we to live the days of our lives? What values ought to guide our way? What beliefs ought we to carry inside of us? We will leave this planet the same way we arrived, with nothing at all. We take nothing with us but the residue of our choices. Will we have made life better for our fellow humans and all of life, or will we have added to the suffering? Every day is a journey of choices, and every day we encounter the consequences of the choices we made yesterday. Life is just that, a continuum of beliefs and choices. Some choices, of course, are far more powerful than others, and their consequences are far more reaching and impactful toward others and the destiny of our lives. Forgiveness has the power to change our lives and the lives of others. Perhaps that's why it's so difficult to forgive. Do we want to release that much power? The illusion is that I'm setting another person free, that I am sending a message to that person that what he or she has done to me is insignificant. The reality is, in my heart, I know that I am setting myself free from my own hatred and vengeance, my own hurt feelings, and the rotting pride that I wrap myself in every day. Why does it seem to be such a challenge sometimes to let go of the inner rotting feeling? Shen spirits, fire spirits, give us the courage to heal ourselves, for we are the ones crumbling inside. We are the ones filled with pain, filled with suffering. So Creator, show us the way out of our own selves. Shen spirits, show us the way out of our own selves.
Aho.
So with that being said, we're going to talk about forgiveness tonight and our journey into that, and how it's actually more of a wood elemental initiation than that, but that can blossom during fire summer season.
Okay.
So, but the first place to start is with what is the soul? And again, what is an initiation? Simply because initiations happen in our souls. So first of all, the soul is not a religious object. We can use religion to access our souls, to house it, to give it form and function. But the truth is our souls don't have a religion, and our souls are not the same as our spirits. The spirit is the energetic part of our ego, the energetic life form that animates each one of us in this lifetime. Our soul is a much deeper part of us that embodies the mystical, magical laws of creation. It carries that wisdom of the laws, that divine humanity. from the get-go. It carries the wisdom from the time of the primordial Tao, when it was just the whirling vortex of creation and nothing at all. It carries that wisdom. We all have that. That's an innate wisdom in us that we've just simply forgotten. So the wisdom of the laws that divine humanity tells us innately things like you don't harm or hurt somebody who is weaker than you. You get up and you go feed the hungry, things like this. This gives us our deep sense of humanity that makes us human.
Yeah.
The soul also is part of our intuition. That's where our intuition comes from, is our soul. And that is also impersonal. It has no religion or anything. But it's always operating, kind of like the radar on those military planes that you see with the big round dish, right?
Right. And may I comment? Well,
yeah.
Before you continue, I really love the fact that you're beginning with this, talking about the soul, because I start getting the notion that lots of people that are smart enough to doubt the system and to want to leave the system still have this big blockade in front of them, which is the denial of the soul, the denial of a spiritual nature. I was just with a friend yesterday who is like so intelligent, and he's so really free from the system, but still he has this huge blockade with the acceptance of a mystical and spiritual nature, right? He really like thinks that's bullshit. He thinks that's not real. So I really love the fact that you're defining this, and everything you're saying is so on the spot for those people who would be almost there but still have this blockage or blockade. I don't know how to call it this.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes from the fact that we think it has everything to do with religion, and it has nothing to do with religion.
Right.
It has nothing to do with a belief in a God or not, no God or spirits, or it just is. It simply is. We can't get away from our souls.
Right. But for example,
we can choose to leave our soul stream. And when we permanently leave it, then we did.
But for example, the poetic nature,
Okay, it's either me frozen or you frozen. Okay, we're back.
we lost connection for it's back now.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Okay, so the military aircraft have this round antenna radar that's kind of like our intuition. However, we have 125 million miles of DNA, and each little strand of DNA, each little chromosome of DNA has its antenna sticking out there. So it's very interesting that JP Morgan Chase told Nikola Tesla he didn't want just anybody sticking their antennas up and accessing electricity for free when we each have 125 million miles of antennas just sticking up there for free, right? So this is our 125 million miles of intuition antennas in us, and always picking up impersonal signals. We pick up the signals of people we walk by. We're constantly reading everybody and everything. We're also picking up the signals of the events that are forming in the air. And our intuitive our intuitive instincts are inherently attuned to the vulnerabilities of our fellow humans. And we consciously choose to turn down those intuitive receptors so that we don't sense the vulnerabilities. That's why we look the other way when we walk by a homeless person on the street or make harsh remarks, right? The harsh remarks are a way of turning off the sensitivity that we're feeling, the reading that we just did. We also do this in our close relationships so that we don't feel what our spouse or our significant other or our kids are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And when we decide to take position on something or want our needs to be center stage, we put up a firewall to make sure that our message gets communicated and the other words or messages doesn't get in through our firewall. That firewall can become anger or hostility because our natural intuitive state is to sense vulnerability. But we're afraid to let it in because it might weaken us, or we might become forgiving, putting ourselves in even more of a vulnerable position. So in order to prevent our vulnerability, our humanity, we become more angry and more icy. So that's what accounts for the cruelty we see in prisons, for instance, in the police force. In order to not feel in the vulnerabilities of the people who are incarcerated, the guards have to compromise their humanity. So do the other inmates. They have to. That's the only way such atrocities can be carried on.
Yeah, you have to be inhuman to be there, right?
Yeah, you have to build that firewall really thick. So I used to do that. That's what I told my medics when I was in Iraq, when they couldn't figure out how to get past that. I didn't realize I was talking about the intuitive soul, but I told them it's like turning a switch. You just bring down this wall so it doesn't sense a vulnerable human being. It senses them as a with a name. It senses them as just a human being that needs help. That makes it easier so you don't feel, I said, so you don't get personally attached, but I didn't realize at the time it was so that I wouldn't sense their vulnerability.
Yeah.
And take it, especially if they were going to die. So our soul holds the blueprint of our sacred cosmic nature. Our elders didn't understand this because in our grandparents' age, the cosmic blueprint of the soul had not been animated yet. They were still fully living in machine time, right? But since our grandparents' time, and I'm not going to say everybody, because there's of course the ancient, the native peoples that held on to that had the blueprint of the soul already, but the majority of us white people, it wasn't animated until recently, probably in the last 20 to 30 years.
Wow.
So Buddha and Jesus, and I'm not talking about either one of these as a religion, simply as great teachers with wonderful teachings, they animated a new humanity. It doesn't matter if they were separated by 500 years or more. They just simply, between the two of them, they opened up a new template for the way human beings would be. Prior to their time, humanity was really tribal. People didn't make individual decisions. There were no individuals in the tribe. It was all the tribe. There was one mind, and that was the tribal mind, and that was it. So they introduced a new way of being. And everything that Jesus taught, everything that Buddha taught, requires that an individual separate a little bit from the way the tribe thinks and to discover their own wise decisions. And I say discover because wise decisions are never made, they're discovered. That comes from our soul. Our soul helps us discover them. When we're making decisions, our ego is imposed on it.
Yeah.
So you can only forgive as an individual. A whole tribe can't forgive. And you can only decide as an individual what your illusions are. Everything these two teachers taught was a lot more sophisticated than any previous teachings. And the previous teachings had formed the world culture. And again, it matters not one bit in cosmic mind how many hundreds of years they were separated by. It still caused a shift. It still opened a hole, burnt a hole in time. They introduced the most extraordinary cosmic teachings, giving us a map of empowering ourselves as individuals. Buddha took the mind, Jesus took the heart. And now the structures of Jesus and Buddha that have held religions together are evaporating. And the fire spirits they carried is waking up in all of us, so that we will animate a time of no more churches, no more central governments, etc. Instead, a time of being the teachings, a time of living with kindred communities, a synergistic societies.
Wow, that's prophetic.
Yeah. They, the teachings of them, are awakening in the limbs of the tree of life, that is our body. So initiation experiences will become one of the organic teachers of our own new yet ancient spirit-filled life. And when we look at history, we see where groups of souls would incarnate together, or not necessarily together, but in kind of the same time period, to jumpstart a whole new era of consciousness, like Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Confucius, Martin Luther, that all launched a renaissance, and yet people didn't know they were in a renaissance until a few centuries had passed, and the effect was felt, and the quantity and quality of life changed, and they looked back and said, wow, there's been a renaissance, a transformation.
Yeah.
So that's what an initiation is. Again, it's an experience that happens that at the time in your life, you don't initially realize you're being initiated. It's not something that comes on you consciously, so that you say, wow, I just had an initiation. I am finally at that point where it's like, what's going on? Oh, okay. It must be an initiation experience.
Yeah. And it might take a long time. It might be a process of years.
Yeah. Yeah. An initiation process can, depending on how hard you fight it, how much you resist it, can be a year, many years process.
Well, I never really fought it, and except maybe for a few instances. But it's like, I feel like I'm constantly being initiated. Like I'm going deeper into the hole as time goes by.
Yeah, no, it's not, there's not just one initiation, it's one right after the other, especially when you walk the spirit-filled path. They don't ever leave you alone. Once you start walking a spirit-filled path, you can't ever go back.
Yeah.
Right? Because
A truly spiritual path, because we can get deceived by spiritually things.
Yeah. True. So initiations don't tend to announce themselves. They don't tend to come knocking on the door and say, hey, I'm an initiation, I'm here. They begin like most any other experience we have, but they have certain signatures. So life is a bunch of experiences, and in the course of day, many things happen. So a lot of the interactions we have can be dealt with minimal commotion, because we know what to do. Knowing doesn't mean we want to do it. So in an initiation experience, the resolution is either something we fight, or it's something we battle with, because it requires that something in us be dismantled for the resolution to happen. Something in me has to undergo a profound transformation, or I will not get out of this. And when we take a self-righteous stance, it can be brutal. The initiation does not let up with our self-righteousness.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah.
So the self-righteousness fuels a fire that can lead to a really magnificent initiation. It may not feel like one, but it at the time. So as I was writing this, this is where I came to the point where forgiveness is probably more of a wood initiation, and water, because the result of hard feelings is hardening, right? So I had an initiation back around the solstice, not the summer solstice, the winter solstice. I told you about this, I'm pretty sure. I was the elemental spirits had said to me, Ingrid, you want to learn about us, you want to get to know us, then you're going to live by us. Quit trying to be productive. This is water, winter. It's not time for you to be focused on being productive. It's time. So every time I tried to have a productive day, I would get sick. I would get yanked into bed to not be productive. So one day, I felt like Wonder Woman had me with her golden lasso right around the base of my rib cage. The pain started and I felt that it was like, oh my gosh. So I'm on my hands and knees on the floor, trying to open to this pain so it would flow. And I look up what the energetic significance, I knew it was my gallbladder, probably. And the underlying energetic architecture of gallstones, a gallbladder attack, is inability to forgive, hard feelings. So at that point, I was on my hands and knees for a couple hours going through the list of everyone I could think of. I release these hard feelings. I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. I release, I release, I release. And it eased. I get back on the couch and a couple hours later it starts again. So I'm back on the floor on my hands and knees. Had I not done that, any hard feelings, any unforgiveness towards anybody in my life could very well have solidified into gallstones, and I could have been in the hospital now in the fire season when everything blossomed, right? With a gallbladder full of gallstones. And I happen to know someone in my family who just spent the 4th of July, Independence Day, Liberation Day in the hospital with the same thing. Gallstones. The other way it can manifest in our lives is kidney stones.
Yeah.
Right. Calcifications, hardness, hard feelings, can't let go of and it might be, it may be so far long ago we think we may have forgiven, but we didn't truly. And we're still carrying stories of suffering, and it may take an initiation by fire to bring it to our attention fully, to have a gallbladder full of gallstones on a day that's supposed to be significant of being free of, of hard feelings. Right?
Yeah, it helps. I mean, the body at the end of the day, even if we have a culture of wanting to avoid disease or any type of suffering at all costs, but then sometimes it's a good thing. It's an initiation by itself.
Our biography, our stories, our biography becomes our biology. That's another line anyone that works with me will hear me say many, many times. Our biography will become our biology. So if we hold on to stories of suffering and don't forgive, they will harden into gallstones, into kidney stones.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's a context about forgiveness. I was kind of thinking we were going to do some type of exercise to forgive, but then we're just...
No, we're not done. So when you're locked onto something's captured your reason. You become unreasonable, and your inner world revolves around this, holding too much space in your emotional life, and it freezes you, commands you in some way. It's where things like gallstones, gallbladder stones, kidney stones, and it doesn't even have to be just those two organs. It could be a fibrous cyst somewhere in your body, a hard cyst, a ganglion cyst. That could be an indication of something having gotten so frozen in you that you can't let go of it, that you've got to learn to forgive.
Yeah.
So the boulder has to be moved from the road because it defines your history, your life. And you tend to describe yourself to people through the experience instead of through your talents, your gifts. It's something that commands. So the template Jesus introduced was forgiveness and love, mostly forgiveness. And I'm going to tell this story in two different ways. I'm going to start with the story as it's written in the Bible, and then we'll shift into the story as it's told by Ingrid, because it's time for the story to change, and I'll go into that.
Okay.
So the story of Jesus is that of an idea hero who presented an alternative way of living, because human beings want this world to be something it will really be. We want it to be logical, orderly, and fair. We want it to be just, and we want it to revolve around only us. So we created a God that we believe will work on our side. We believe that if we're good people and live in certain neighborhoods and in fenced, gated neighborhoods, nothing bad will happen to us. We believe all kinds of things about this God we created because we want our world to be logical, orderly, fair, and just, and revolve around us.
Mm-hmm.
None of these beliefs are true, because a truth applies equally across the board to everyone.
Yeah.
The truth is that we create a series of subjective beliefs, and that we want the world to work out the way we want it to. And when it doesn't, we hold others responsible and don't forgive ourselves even. And this is how we create our system of disappointment and pain.
Right. Yeah, so much untangling. Keep going.
So Jesus said there's an alternative, and that's forgiveness. Buddha said the outside world is an illusion because it's a reflection of the madness behind your eyes. So Jesus said, I'll give you a template, I'll live it out, and then it's up to you. He said, I'll be betrayed, abandoned by my friends, be put in jail. So he goes into the Garden of Gethsemane, knowing he's going to have a very lousy weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And he prayed, asking this initiatory experience to be taken away, and he heard nothing. And a lot of times when we don't get an answer, we feel like God's or the spirits aren't listening to us. But a magical, mystical truth is that if you don't hear anything, that's also an answer. So he said, okay, thy will be done. So he's accused of a crime he didn't commit. He was arrested for nothing. He was physically tortured and abandoned by his friends. These are all our greatest nightmares.
Yeah.
And Pontius Pilate said to him, look, say something, because I have the power. I can let you go. Jesus' reply to him was, no, you don't have the power. I agreed to this. So Pontius Pilate said, get him out of here, crucify him, and get me some water so I can wash my hands of him. As Jesus hung on the cross, he said, heaven, where are you? You abandoned me. And I've been through this. I've, in this journey of starting BWD Ranch that has evolved into the first Aini village of Owl Freedom Nation, there's been many times I was shaking my fist at heaven, asking why it had abandoned me.
Yeah.
It's an aloneness.
But is
And
that something that must be done, that must happen, or not?
It's yeah, because it causes us to really let go of everything and rely exclusively on our destiny, our pact with heaven, our heavenly forces, our cosmic forces.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's as if he looks around and realized, I can forgive them because they had to be part of this. They're walking this life with me. This is the part they needed to play. And so then, as he was now in charge, he released his spirit through forgiveness, and he died. And at the moment he died, the story in the Bible is that the veils in the temple that separated the most holy place from that only the priest could go in was torn in half. So there was no more separation, no more secrecy, right?
Wow.
So I wrote this on the evening of July the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm writing it, I said to myself, this story has got to change, because we're saying he took he took a charge and he released his spirit and he died. So this tells us the only way to release ourselves out of our suffering is to die. And that story needs to change. So I'm going to change it. We have a song, I don't know if you've heard it, down the Via Dolorosa, called The Way of Suffering, The Way of Pain, where Jesus carried his cross through Jerusalem. At any point in time, he could have, and this is a story I will tell from now on, at some point in time, he looked around and realized that he could forgive everybody around him because they had to be part of this. They had to be, and he put down his cross and said, I'm done suffering, and now I've given you this template. You can put down your cross of suffering anytime. You do not have to carry it to the death.
Yeah.
And the veils in the temple would have still rent open. Now, as you know, I told you that merely 6 or 8 hours after I decided that this story needed to change and I was going to change this story, the veils between our earth and sun opened for 14 hours on Friday the 7th.
Yeah, the geomagnetic storm.
Well, it wasn't, it was a thinning of the veils caused by a lot of cosmic activity, but not just, we humans have every bit to do with it. And so we were fully inundated on Friday with a geomagnetic storm because of that opening of the veils.
Right.
But so anytime, he could have even in the Garden of Gethsemane said, when he didn't hear something, because heaven cannot compel performance. You pray to heaven and say, take this from me. Heaven cannot, will not. It cannot compel performance. This is where your individual free will comes in. You can say, okay, fine, you know what? I don't think I need to experience this. I don't want to experience this. I don't need the lessons brought through suffering anymore. You can bring them a better way. I'm releasing this burden to you now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm forgiving them before it even happens because I'm done suffering. I don't need this. So at any point in time, we realize we're sitting there praying, saying, release this suffering, release this burden. Mm-hmm. We don't have to go all the way through to our crucifixion. We can set ourselves free at any point in time.
Yeah, but then most of this forgiveness is self-forgiveness then.
Well, that's where it starts. Exactly. It starts with forgiving yourself for everything that you're going through.
But then the challenge there is, you have to stop deceiving yourself and realize that you blame yourself. So you have to confront that something that you probably don't. I mean, I see people that do this, that they have like deep inside of them this self-blame, but then they don't realize it. They're not aware of it, right? So to forgive themselves, they first have to realize that they are blaming themselves. And many times it's something that they're not going to want to see. They don't want it. Like what I began with in the conversation, which is, the truth makes you uncomfortable. So you're always going to avoid it. So I guess it's kind of weird because you gotta let go of suffering, but to do that, first you are going to apparently going to suffer the encounter with your blame and your reality, right? You have to go through that suffering first. Yeah.
Sometimes, because we believe there's a via dolorosa, right? That we have to suffer too. So we wait until we're suffering before we look at things. So everything about this story of forgiveness stands in opposition to our rational mind, right? Because there's nothing rational about forgiveness. That's what makes it an initiation. we try to rationalize it away. There's nothing rational about forgiveness.
It's the choice, I guess.
It's an irrational thing that demands you do something irrational with yourself. And we live in a society that celebrates suffering. We give it a lot of attention. Hell, we sing songs in church about Jesus on the cross, the suffering. It's like it's to be glorified. And I saw it with my dad as he was dying of cancer. Up until the very last end, he did not want to lay down his cross of suffering.
And you see people here in Mexico, it's very common to see folks being glorifying. Well, it's not just Mexico. I guess it's everywhere. We glorify the worker, right? Somebody that has 2 jobs. Oh, he's suffering to maintain his family, to keep. We glorify the suffering. We glorify he's doing 2 jobs, but he's making a lot of money. What a hero.
Yeah.
And well, I guess it makes sense. I mean, if you're going to suffer, at least you got to glorify it. You got to get some, it makes sense at the end of the day.
Well, we support it so much that it's created a very strong martyr archetype. So we all like to be martyrs, right?
Exactly. The martyr archetype.
This is a big part of the people who ran out and got the shots and were their lives was devastated by it. They were hanging themselves on this cross of martyrdom. I did this for you guys. Why aren't you here to help me now? So this is where I want to bring in where we talked last week about the fixed fields, the fixed archetypes. The way it came to me since we talked about that, did you see the movie Flubber?
Is it an animated movie?
No, it was with Robin Williams. It's way old. It's about as old as Lexus. It's about flubber. It's about this green gelatinous substance.
Oh yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I did. A long time ago.
Yes, it's old. It's over 20 years old. So
yeah, I did too.
So we have these fields, these more thick fields of resonance that are floating all around us all the time, right? And we can flubber archetypes out of them all the time. But the energy of the field is always fixed. We can flubber an archetype out and give it all kinds of powers.
Yeah.
So it's time for us to unflubberize the martyr archetype. It can dissolve back into the field where it came from.
Just bringing this into attention, to me, it's really powerful because I'm seeing the power in this and you're kind of bringing this into view, at least for me, the way you've been mentioning the archetypes and so forth. You're bringing this into my attention in a new way. I was probably partially aware of it, but now I have words. I've had somebody. Everything changes when somebody tells you something that but nobody's ever told you before, right? And so you're probably doing a lot of that right here. And to me, the power here of bringing into attention, into awareness, the archetypes is really powerful because you can realize it can really help you get out of this mechanistic mindset that actually doesn't make sense. There's this logical mindset that it's not really logical. I mean, the math doesn't add up really. And where it does add up is if we grow beyond that and we see things as an archetype. Everything's archetypical. It's all like fields of archetypes. So once you are aware of that, you can so easily realize, oh, I'm falling, my mind is falling into this archetype, right? Do I want that?
Yeah, I'm letting flubber control me. That's exactly what it is. I'm letting flubber control me.
So then we can choose what archetypes. I mean, and we can grow away. We can really,
Absolutely.
I can take my mind out of that and stop thinking in a few seconds, I'm already thinking way differently. And I guess that
Yeah.
that requires something, and we're doing something here that I don't know if to call mental plasticity, but this ability to
Yeah.
rewire. And
Yeah.
I don't want to bring it down to mechanistic mind and say, oh, it's the way we're wiring our brain. It's just how you are thinking, right?
Julian, that's not mechanistic. Plasticity isn't mechanistic. What's mechanistic is that the philosophy that says once it's wired this way, it's always wired this way. And with every drink of alcohol you take, you're killing brain cells, right? Plasticity is actually very non-mechanistic because it means that at any time in your life, you can rewire your brain and you can grow it.
Yeah, if you believe that, this or that is wrong for you, it's going to be, I mean, it comes down to that. The reality is what you believe the reality is. The thing is, we've been so bombarded by this science, by this temple of science, which is the modern world. And many of these things that we take as scientific facts are not facts. They are just, misinterpreted, they're dogmas in biology.
They're
everywhere.
Flubbers. They're all flubbers. It was after we talked about that the movie Flubber popped into my head, and I'm like, oh my God, it's all these archetypes are all flubbers. We can unflubberize them anytime. We can just let flubber melt back in and flubberize a new archetype out.
Yeah,
because that's what the energy fields are there for. Is there's some archetypes that are very primal, very, very old, that can't be, right? They're not going to be unflubberized.
well, we can and I guess we can coexist. We can all like live. They're not going to stop existing because we stop identifying with them.
That's why I'm saying what's fixed.
But we can stop identifying with them.
Yeah,
right?
What's fixed underneath them is this field of energy that we flubberize them out of, right? So we can, if we stop giving flubber the attention, flubber will go away and go bug somebody else. Or flubber will just melt back into the field and we can flubberize another archetype out.
Yeah. Well, I'm
like the martyr.
The flubber analogy is I'm having a hard time using that myself right now. Like flubber, I'm trying to get my mind around the flubber idea, but I get the archetype thing. Yeah, it's been too long.
So we don't want to forget our suffering because we want it acknowledged. But if our life is formed around suffering, abandonment, and victim consciousness, then a situation will capture us and we won't get out of it unless we transform, unless we let that flubber die.
Yeah.
No one else can do this work for us. It has to be done by ourselves. So an initiation experience is a chipping away of how we want the world to be, to we think it should be, to what it really can be, fully can be.
And what we want to be. And
yeah. So when we think of forgiveness, we might feel a willingness to forgive, but we probably also feel the residual need to condemn, because we've created this artificial polarity of right versus wrong, good versus bad. Only our thinking makes something good or bad, right or wrong. So when we let go of the need to condemn and call something wrong or bad, we can really, really, truly forgive. And forgiving calls on the powers of compassion, tolerance, kindness, mercy, and humility.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when we think of forgiveness, we might find it challenging to find compassion for the person or event we're forgiving. Take, for instance, a person like Hitler. There's no way out of our own power that we can find the compassion in ourselves to forgive this man for the mass murder of 6 million Jews.
Mm-hmm.
True forgiveness comes from aligning with our source that has no limits, like unconditional love. It's forgiveness is all or nothing. You can't choose which events or people you're going to forgive. You can't say I can never forgive Hitler for what he did, or I can never give Anthony Fauci for his part in this COVID-19. You have to. You don't have a choice unless you want to have every possible stone show up in your body. And for even if you go have your gallbladder surgically removed with all the stones, they're all still there energetically. Just because the physical sign is gone doesn't mean it's not still there. So,
it reminds me of this healer, this native Wixárika healer. He used the healing technique that they call them the suckers, chupadores, people who suck, and he will go like this over your body, and then he will take stones out, and he's like,
yeah,
stones, or sometimes he would get this clogs or weird things like a corn grain.
yeah.
But mostly stones. He would mostly suck stones out of people.
The problem is when you don't do the work to solve what created the stone, it'll just be formed again.
Right.
So that's a hack that can remove the physical, but you've got to still work on the energetic architecture underneath that caused the stone.
Well,
which is
in my experience, that was that where I had a stone was in my throat, and I mean I went through so many things, right, and so many that I can't really point to one of those things and say that's what healed me. They were all part of it. So, I'm thankful that happened to me and that he sucked that stone out. And
yeah, well,
it wasn't right then, but in that process, which probably took like 1 or 2 years, I eventually overcame this throat problem that I once had.
Yeah, you healed it. You didn't overcome it. You healed it.
Right, I healed it. But then, like you say, it I mean, if I think about it now, to me, it was really about my mind, how my mind was built around that. It wasn't a physical thing. It was really just a thing about me and my mind making it. And then I couldn't say what, I think everything helped. The sealer helped, but I also know that it wouldn't have been enough with the healer sucking that stone out. I still had to do a lot of other things.
That's why shamanic work by itself is great, but unless you do the actual healing work, unless you go further into it, it's that solidification is just going to come right back.
Yeah.
Right. So our ego also tends to get in the way of and want to call the shots when we think of forgiving. So the problem always seems to be out there with someone else. So always out there, right? It also, our egos also.
The body can also be out there. The body can also be the out there. The body can also be the out there. You can also say, oh, my liver is wrong. Oh, I have my whatever is and blame it on the body and not do the work and realize what in my mind, in my soul is wrong and that I can change.
What needs to be healed?
Exactly.
Right. It's not that my pancreas frickin' abandoned me and I now have diabetes. Is it possible for me to bring back to return to living a joyful life so that my pancreas can start working again?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So our ego also believes in the reality of the physical world the way we speak it into being, and in the complete integrity of what happened. And so then it tries to figure it all out to control the situation. True forgiveness knows the imbalance lies inside of ourselves and also helps us recognize the illusions that we see, so that we can get to the root cause and know that it's all in the stories we're telling ourselves, so that we can respond by surrendering to the perfection of the situation.
Yeah.
And that
Timing
word was
perfect.
deliberately chosen because next week we will go into talking about surrender. But lastly, what forgiveness is not, forgiveness is not forgiving out of a sense of obligation. When we see forgiveness as the right thing to do, it now becomes a false or pseudo forgiveness. When we forgive out of a sense of righteousness, this comes from thinking we're right and they are wrong or stupid, which is simply pure arrogance.
Yeah.
Bestowing forgiveness like it's a gift. No one, we don't have the power to bestow forgiveness.
Right.
Forgiveness flows through us when we're willing to open to it.
And do the
Pretending.
work.
Yeah. Pretending forgiveness, like we're like, oh, it's nothing. I'm not angry about it. It's nothing. When we really haven't taken time to feel, let our emotions flow. And so then we become a doormat. So first we need to feel the emotions before we can forgive, and then we can forgive and put down the cross on the Via Dolorosa.
Yeah.
Forgive and forget simply creates denial. Forgiveness is not erasure. Wisdom lets us know that there's a gift in the situation, and the remembering of the lesson is important. Otherwise, we'll just do it all over again.
Okay.
And then making excuses for the person you're forgiving, because you can't excuse anything away. Forgiveness is just simply letting go of the hope that the past could have been different.
Okay.
That's one reason why we don't forgive, is because we want the past to be different. We just let go of that hope that the past could have been different. That's all forgiveness is.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
And
Such
then
a weird attachment that we have, huh?
yeah, I know, right? Another pseudo forgiveness is forgiving, but not condoning the behavior. This keeps us in a self-righteous intellectual space. You can't separate the murderer from the murder. You have to forgive the whole thing.
Right.
Accountability comes from the wisdom that we create the circumstances that hurt other people and ourselves, and that in a world of humanity, the law of cause and effect is still fully present. So anytime we want to affect a different outcome, we just have to put the cross down and not take it to full crucifixion.
Mm-hmm. And that can be done once you learn that you can do it for your past things or events. You can let go of your past, but then also it can become a present thing where you can change events around as they're happening, where you stop perceiving them in the same way, outside of that suffering or that victimization. You start so everything becomes an opportunity.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it is, it becomes a good thing.
Yeah, there's always a gift in the situation. So since I briefly spoke the word surrender, surrendering to the perfection of the situation, that's where we're going next week, is fire initiations by surrendering.
Okay.
Or into surrendering, because surrendering is another thing we don't like to do. It's just like forgiveness.
Right.
Because we take surrender as a defeat when it's not.
Right. Makes me think of my mom, where she has a very surrender mindset. always. You know, she even has this on her profile or whatever, this the intro, the text that you can have in your profile. She says, surrender give up the winning so you can take the victory, or you can grant the victory.
Yeah, I'll look up the story of the mythological story of the Hydra.
Okay.
That's the full example for next week about surrender.
Okay.
The 7-headed monster.
Okay.
Because that'll tie right into what your mother has on the fridge, you said?
No, on her profile, her WhatsApp.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So yeah. So we're into the hour, and well, we've done a long journey very shortly of a lot of profound thoughts and teachings. And I want to thank anyone on behalf of themselves. This is kind of weird, but anyone that can bring themselves to the patience of listening, right? Oh, this is not entertaining enough. This is not fast enough. This is not paced. This is not exciting enough. We're not stressed enough to entertain them. So it really requires having this quietness, this, you know, and listening. And once you listen, because some people I know they're gonna hear the word Jesus, and they're, oh, okay, and they're gonna just leave, you know, and they're not even understanding in what context Jesus is coming in, right? Right. So we're not religious here. So I want to thank, if somebody made it through to this point, you are, I really admire you. So I want to thank you, and I want to invite you. We want to invite you to the next week at 6 o'clock. We will continue with this. With these.
There's also the people that might have listened to me and then are now declaring me as a heretic because I chose to change the story of Jesus and the cross, and it will be forever changed for me. I will never. I made the decision on the evening of the 6th that I would never again after tonight tell the story of that he died on the cross as a way of taking charge of himself. I'm going to start telling the story that he put down his cross and there is no more via dolorosa.
Right.
No more way of suffering, no more way of pain.
That's a great thing to do. And I think it can guide a lot of, not just people, but minds, you know. You're kind of guiding the mind, even though there's not a lot of people following that. I really see how you are guiding the mind, and we're all in the same mind. So you probably realize that it's not a small thing that is happening here. Whoever's watching this, so join us next week. And I just want to say thank you and see you next time.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we'll stop the live stream.